minutes past 8. Let's go straight now to Isabel Oakeshott, Talks International Editor. Isabel, very good morning to you. We've been a very, very busy day today already. People keep saying to me, it's quite a slow news day. Is it really? I don't think we've had one of those for a long time.
I think there's so much to talk about. Where do we begin? Let's dissect for a minute that Maria Caulfield interview.
Yes.
I mean, she did her best, but honestly, I mean, I'm getting used to, and I'm sure voters are too, hearing the lamest of lame defences of the total abject failure on immigration.
Yeah.
But that really was utterly pathetic, trying to blame it all on Ukraine and Hong Kong.
I know.
Is she really familiar with the figures? Does she look at them? I look at them all the time. The figures for Ukraine and Hong Kong are an absolute minority of the overall figures. You can't wheel that out as an excuse. Then coming out with we think nurses should be able to bring everyone with them. Well, even that is actually questionable. I mean, in most countries, if you go over to do a job like that, you aren't necessarily allowed to bring most of your family with you. And she wheeled out the most emotive example. Reality is, as we know, that we've got actual students bringing their mums and dads over. They're so-called dependent. So I don't think voters are going to be at all impressed with that intervention by Maria Caulfield. But then again, the Tories have got nothing really to say at this point. They don't have a leg to stand on. So we see in the other papers today, they're resorting to blaming Russian bots.
Right.
I mean, this is laughable. If it wasn't actually borderline defamatory, it's actually laughable that the Conservative government think the only explanation for why voters are turning away from them in their millions is Russian bots.
Yes.
Brilliant. Well done, guys.
I know. I mean, my favourite bit was as she ran through the last 14 years and said, well, the first bit doesn't count because we were in coalition with the Lib Dems, we couldn't do anything. And then the next bit doesn't count because Theresa May didn't have much of a majority, so we couldn't do anything. And then the next bit doesn't count because even though we did have a big majority, then we got COVID and then the war in Ukraine. So actually, in 14 years, we haven't been able to do anything. Brilliant.
I mean, I was sort of sitting here, I just smiling at it, really. You know, they're casually wafting away 5 years here, 6 years here. Quickly adds up to 14 years, doesn't it? And it's not actually true. I mean, I was reporting every day, all day, every day on the coalition. It was actually quite an effective government. They did a lot. You know, they did a lot of things that people will disagree with. You know, people will not forget so-called austerity. But actually, this country ticked along quite nicely during the coalition years, and plenty was achieved. There were no fewer than 2 referendums, one that was carried out on the voting system. I think people would probably vote differently on that now. And secondly, then the ground was laid for that seminal Brexit referendum. So masses was achieved, actually, 2010 to 2015. No excuses there.
No, exactly right. Let's talk about Keir Starmer. I know you've been quite active on Twitter about this. You know, wants to knock off at 6 p.m. on a Friday night. I mean, he said it to Chris Evans yesterday. You might say he's going a bit, getting a bit ahead of himself, but clearly nobody in their right mind takes on a job like Prime Minister of this country and thinks they can walk away at 6 p.m. Nobody does.
I think that comment will haunt him for his entire premiership.
It will, yeah.
Who is ever going to forget that he said that? Now, do you remember David Cameron was mocked for so-called chillaxing?
Yes.
But David Cameron never actually said he likes to chillax. That was someone else's assessment. Here we have a guy who is auditioning for the most important job in the land, and he's telling us his terms and conditions are that he's not going to work on a Friday night. Are you absolutely kidding me at this point? I mean, one of the key qualities in a prime minister has to be exceptional stamina and the willingness to sacrifice pretty much everything. And I'm sorry if that means that you can't spend the night on the sofa with your family watching Netflix, or you can't attend your child's football game, whatever. That is what goes with a job, because when you audition to be Prime Minister and you get the job, you are putting your country ahead of everything. And sometimes family will have to take second order, and that's brutal. But we're not talking about a job managing Tesco here. We're talking about the job of running our country. You don't get to clock off, not at 6 o'clock on a Friday night. Frankly, Sir Keir, not ever.
No, exactly right. And what about this for a headline? I saw this morning. I think I had the same reaction as you did. Voting reform risks losing hundreds of Tory MPs for a generation. Well, sort of that would be the point of it, wouldn't it?
I mean, whatever your political colours, unless you happen to still be a diehard Conservative, I think the instinctive reaction to that is, well, good.
Yeah.
You know, we've had them for 14 years. They've had their chance. Let's try something else. You know, our listeners will be voting for all sorts of parties. We might have some who think Lib Dems are the answer. They look to be getting a significant number of seats. We might have some who think Greens are the answer. We can't all think the same on this. I'm not sure many people are thinking, oh, there's a headline in the papers saying, if I vote for one of the other parties, I'll get rid of the Tory MPs for a generation. They'll be thinking, oh, well, then I won't do that. And, you know, I think some of this bullying of voters, you know, telling them they can't vote the way their heart tells them to, because then they'll be stuck with Labour for a generation, is insulting to their intelligence. It's frankly like telling people to stay in an abusive relationship because something else might be worse. The relationship this country has with the Tory government is an abusive one now, and most of us are thinking we need to get the hell out of it. And
are you one of those who thinks that this could be a sort of an extinction event, as people are calling it, for the Tories this Thursday?
Do you know, it's so hard to call. You know, I'm kind of thinking if we wake up, I'm sure a lot of us will be up all night because it's so exciting, on Friday morning, and the Conservatives have got less than 100 seats left. That is pretty existential. But it's only existential, I should say, if Reform UK have managed to get, I think if they've managed to get at least 3 into Parliament. I think Reform needs to get Nigel Farage in. Clearly they do, otherwise that's existential for Reform, you might say. They need to get Lee Anderson back in Ashfield. He's a Tory MP that defected to Reform. They do need to get Richard Tyson, and they do need ideally they need to get more than that. If they come out on Friday with less than 3 seats, that is a very disappointing result, and the Conservatives will be extremely relieved that they are not confronting a block of Reform MPs in Parliament.
Yes, I think that's a fascinating take. Very good to talk to you, Isabel. Thank you very much indeed. Isabel Oakeshott, Talk's international editor there.